The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Hello everybody out there in Cheshire East. It's been a while since I've been in Cheshire, and this is the first time we've touched Cheshire East. Now in this run this week I'm going to be heading between the towns of Knutsford, Wilmslow and Macclesfield, and I've chosen a really interesting one to start with. This area I'm standing in here is just a big housing estate, but it used to be the site of a hospital. This is Great Warford. Great Warford, Big Weir Ford. Hello people in Cheshire, I'm back again, and this time I'm beginning the district of Cheshire East. All this week we'll be tackling an area between the towns of Wilmslow and Knutsford. It's very rural with a series of villages that you could describe as piecemeal or straggling. The main road through the area is the A537, which runs into Macclesfield from Knutsford. It would be so easy to drive along that road and not appreciate the history of the area around you, but this slice of Cheshire has a lot to talk about. Great Warford is a brilliant example of what's hidden in plain sight. A very large parish which takes in a huge lump of land, its small population mainly live within four distinct areas: Lindo End, Warford Park, Warford Crescent and the Buttermere Drive estate. Predominantly a farming settlement, Great Warford has existed for approximately 1,000 years. Today, in addition to its agriculture, it's noted for its roles in private healthcare. Indeed, it was once the site of several buildings that were related to a hospital founded by Mary Dendy. Dendy was a Welshwoman famed for promoting residential schools for the mentally handicapped. Great Warford was the location of Sandalbridge Boarding School, or Sandalbridge Colony. It later became the Mary Dendy Houses and finally Mary Dendy Hospital. It still exists, although its main building lies just outside the parish boundary now. A lot of housing in Great Warford is Victorian, but there are several former council houses too, built for local health workers, which are now owned privately. It's a good one this to start the series, so let's have a look at the map. Let's get started by taking a look at Great Warford on an OS map from 1900. This is a new feature I'm introducing into my videos from today onwards, so you guys in Warford get the inaugural map. I could have chosen to use a modern map for this segment, but I've chosen to use the 1900 map because this helps to show how everything was compared to how it is now. As you can see, Great Warford is a massive parish and there's no real village centre. It stretches from Lindo End in the north down to Warford Hall in the south. It takes in Wilmslow Golf Club between the two, which is not marked on this old map. Neither are the main areas of settlement these days. As well as Lindo End, there are three more of them. In the northwest of the parish is Warford Park, which sits on the site of a former school. Another, Buttermere Drive, is to the southwest, close to the Mary Dendy playing fields. The final residential area is called Warford Crescent, and that's just to the north of Merriman's Lane. The majority of the landmarks and features of Great Warford are around those three areas. The parish boundary with Little Warford runs right through Mill Lane before skirting the edge of the playing fields and running off northwards along the Pedley Brook. So let's get started. To begin with, we're looking at Lindo End. This is a small area to the north of Wilmslow Golf Club. Lindo End consists of a handful of houses that line the B5085 Knutsford Road that crosses the northern end of the parish between Wilmslow and the village of Mobley. Let's drive it. In terms of housing, not much has changed in Lindo End since 1900. It still has its cluster of houses and its small pond where Knutsford Road meets Warford Lane. Lindo is a well-known name if you come from Wilmslow, but it's more to do with a nature reserve to the north of this little hamlet. I'm referring to Lindo Moss. Lindo Moss has a history of peat extraction because essentially it's a massive peat bog. It's famous for the Lindo Man, an Iron Age body found within the bog. He was found in 1983 after being left there for several centuries. He died a violent death, it would seem, because he had several injuries, all perfectly preserved in the peat. Lindo Moss is not within the parish boundary, so we'll cover the story of the Lindo Man in a future episode. Staying within Great Warford, let's head south next. On the map from 1900, the area to the south of Lindo End is just a series of fields. That's not the case anymore. Stretching almost the full length of the area between Lindo End and Warford Hall is the Wilmslow Golf Club. As golf clubs go, this one is the ideal blend of both traditional and modern. Founded in the late 1880s, Wilmslow is one of the oldest clubs in Cheshire. However, it's only occupied its present site since 1903, hence its omission from the 1900 map. Ever since, though, it's grown into the golfing behemoth it is today. For over 100 years, this has been modified and developed by a series of eminent golf course architects, including James Braid, J.H. Taylor and Frederick Hawtrey. Rated one of the finest inland courses in the northwest of England, Wilmslow is always in first-class condition. It's playable in all but the most extreme weathers. The club has hosted many prestigious tournaments over the years, including, most recently, the Legends Tour in 2020. Wilmslow Golf Club enjoys the distinction of being the only course in Cheshire where it was once possible for European Tour professionals to earn Ryder Cup points. No fewer than 6 former Ryder Cup captains have tried to master this 6,635-yard par 72 course. Tony Jacklin, Bernard Gallagher, Bernard Langer, Ian Woosnam, Sam Torrance and Nick Faldo. Exiting the golf club, our next job is to head west towards Warford Park. To get there from the golf club, we have to follow a narrow, twisty road called Noah's Ark Lane. Now, unfortunately, Great Warford has no connection to the actual Noah's Ark that we all know from the biblical story. It's far more likely to be a whimsical or descriptive name chosen for this particular location. It maybe refers to a specific feature or perhaps a local legend. A quick Google search will tell you about a pub with the name Noah's Ark, allegedly dating back to the 1700s. The AI response, though, appeared to be talking about a pub in Stafford, not here. However, I did find this rather interesting piece of information. Apparently, when it rains around here, Noah's Ark Lane often floods. By driving along it, you pass over the Mobley Brook, a small stream that defines part of the northern parish boundary before running across the golf course. I'd assume that's the main reason why this road finds itself underwater. Heavy, persistent rain often leads to localised flooding and standing water on many of these lanes too. So, all things considered, maybe the name Noah's Ark isn't all that inaccurate after all, although I doubt you'll need somewhere to take refuge for 40 days and 40 nights. So now we're on this road, Faulkner's Lane, which connects Great Warford to Mobley. You can see the Mobley Brook here, and that divides the two parishes. The locals know this bit as Knowles Green. Focus on the bit that's south of the brook. This area has changed a lot since the time of this map. Here you can see there's an unnamed public house and a couple of cottages. Not so these days. The old pub appears to have gone, and the place is a bit more built up. This is Warford Park, one of the main residential areas in Great Warford Parish today. It consists of around 300 dwellings. Most of those 300 are within a residential and nursing care home called The Willows, which is owned by MHA. Warford Park has a lot more than that though. It can also boast several amenities like a health and leisure club, some tennis courts, the Warford Park Bowling Club, and some expansive gardens, lakes and parkland. It all sits on the site of the old Mobley Boys' School established in 1936. Mobley Boys' School was a bit of an oddity, being located so far away from Mobley itself. It wasn't a mainstream school, it was far from it. In fact, it was more like a children's home, designed to house lads who'd been victims of domestic and sexual abuse. It was part of Manchester City Council's Children's Services, who operated 2 similar homes at Rosehill in Northenden and Broom House in Didsbury. The school's primary purpose was to provide care and housing, and it operated as a residential institution. Mobley could accommodate 120 boys, who were all aged between 12 and 15. In 1973, the school became a CHE, a community home with education. It closed in 1986 before its site was redeveloped into Warford Park. Moberly Boys' School is far from being the only care facility this parish has ever had. The next thing to see is a building that was tied to one of Manchester's most famous hospitals. On this bend, just before you hit the first part of Great Warford Village, is the spectacular Highgrove. Both it and a lodge by the roadside were built in 1903. Highgrove was built as a convalescent home. It was designed to be an extension to Ancoats Hospital in Manchester. Ancoats was a fast-growing area thanks to the Industrial Revolution at the time. Its hospital was built in 1875, replacing the Ardwick and Ancoats dispensary that had existed since 1828. Highgrove is made of brick with stone dressings. It has a slate roof, 2 stories, an attic and a courtyard. Above the central doorway is a sculpture of a mother and children under a floral canopy. It closed as a hospital in 1967, but it still continued in healthcare afterwards, becoming a nursing home. However, it was converted into apartments in 2001. Now we've covered all those straggling outlying areas of Great Warford, it's time to begin our main walk. This will start in Great Warford, but it will end in Little Warford tomorrow. Yeah, there's certainly a healthcare/hospital theme to this one, as we're about to see. Highgrove is just one example. There are plenty others here in Great Warford. Let's drive down this road now and find something else that's definitely healthcare related. We will start and end on the Buttermere Drive estate, less than half a mile away from Highgrove. This map shows the area from 125 years ago. It was, quite simply, nothing, save for the manor house on the road from Highgrove and a few other buildings with the name Norbury. Today, it's full of housing. The Buttermere Drive estate consists of modern 20th and 21st century homes. There are 3 streets on this estate, and they're all named after locations in the Lake District. Buttermere is the main one, but there's also Derwent, Ennerdale, Ullswater and Coniston. It all stands on the site of the administrative buildings for another hospital, the Mary Dendy. Given the presence of the hospitals in this area, it should come as no great shock to learn that Great Warford was once occupied by a lot of healthcare workers. Several buildings around Great Warford used to be owned by the Mary Dendy Hospital. Others have disappeared, replaced with new developments like this. So before we go any further, we should really explain what the Mary Dendy Hospital is. It still exists, albeit just over the parish boundary to the south. Mary Dendy, born in Bryn Celyn in North Wales in 1855, was a promoter of residential schools for mentally handicapped people, i.e. institutionalisation. Dendy was the driving force that established a colony for what she referred to as the feeble-minded. This was not an uncommon term in those days. Feeble-minded was used to refer to mental disorders. These days we'd refer to them as illnesses, deficiencies of the mind and other disabilities. Dendy became interested in the care of the feeble-minded in Manchester after sitting on a school board in 1896. In this position, her work saw her visit many schools across Manchester, forming a particular interest in the treatment of children with any mental deficiency. At the time, the term mental deficiency was very broad. It encompassed all degrees of educational and social deficiency. Within it was a hierarchy ranging from idiocy, which was at the most severe end of the scale, to feeble-mindedness, which was seen as high functioning. Dendy believed in separate development for feeble-minded children in order to avoid both crime and these people passing their problems onto their children. These youngsters were, in her opinion, the result of alcohol and poverty. Without the intervention of society, their weaknesses would be inherited by future generations. The worst cases of feeble-mindedness were, according to her, the milder forms. Those people could hide their problems better, and so were more likely to pass them on to their children. Her belief was that feeble-minded children needed to be housed in institutions, and so persuaded the board to open special schools for them. Her argument was that it should be legally possible to confine children who were feeble-minded, saying the only way to remove the evil within them was by preventing it. Her work paid off. In October 1898, the Lancashire and Cheshire Society for the Permanent Care of the Feeble-Minded was established by the members of Manchester School Board. In 1908, they founded the Sandalbridge Boarding School, sometimes known as Sandalbridge Colony. It was designed to offer permanent care for the feeble-minded. It was open to anyone who had been a resident of Sandalbridge, a small area close to Great Warford, since 1902. In 1933, Mary Dendy died, so the society changed the name of Sandalbridge Colony to honour her work. It became the Mary Dendy Homes, and today we know it as Mary Dendy Hospital. And of course, the Mary Dendy Hospital that we know today is a little bit different to the one that used to stand here. It's more of a secure unit. It's not really like a mental asylum or anything like that, like it would have been back in those times. There are a couple of hospital buildings that remain on this estate, by the way. There's one of them behind me there. That's definitely older than any of these houses we've just seen on the Buttermere Drive estate. Now, while we're on the subject of old buildings, that brings us to our next area here in Great Warford. We're going to take a walk to the east now to find a hall. Our next area sees us take in a building that was once owned by the Mary Dendy Hospital. Again, here's the map from 1900. This section will cover the two chapels you can see here, one a Methodist building and the other a Baptist building, both shown sitting on Merriman's Lane. In the southeast of the parish, sitting within a modest area of parkland, is Warford Hall. This is virtually the same now as it's always been. Warford Hall was designed by the architect W. Roberts. It was built in 1867 for J.C. Rowley. A large house constructed in an Italianate style, it's made of red brick and oldly edged stone. On its front is a tower porch set on the skew, but perhaps its most notable feature is its spire, which makes it look like a church from a distance. At some point after the founding of the Mary Dendy Hospital, it was taken over by it, although in what capacity is seemingly unknown. Warford Hall would later find fame in another way. This 11-bedroom mansion was to become the residence of former Premier League footballer Ashley Ward. The centre-forward had a journeyed career, playing for Norwich City, Derby County, Barnsley, Blackburn Rovers, Bradford City, Wrexham, Leicester City, Crewe Alexandra and Sheffield United. Arguably, it was his wife, Dawn Ward, who put this place on the map more. Dawn appeared on the reality TV series The Real Housewives of Cheshire, parts of which were filmed at the Hall. The Wards have since moved on and now live in Dubai. The Hall, though, remains as the grandest property in Great Warford today. This is Warford Green, which lies between the Hall's entrance and a residential area named Warford Crescent. Large and somewhat stomach-shaped, it's populated by several large trees. Warford's residents used to hold an annual bonfire and fireworks party here every November to celebrate Guy Fawkes Night. However, that was halted by the parish council in the early 1990s due to safety concerns, primarily its location close to Merriman's Lane. Next, let's cover those chapels. This is the former Methodist building and it's Wesleyan in origin. It opened in 1843 and closed in 1963 after 120 years of service. Today it's a private house, but the other chapel on Merriman's Lane is still very much active. Let's take a look at that. This is the Baptist Chapel, which is the oldest building in the entire village. It was built in the mid-17th century. The year 1659 seems to be the most likely. Its history runs really deep. In 1712, a group of dissenters who had been meeting in local farmhouses acquired this building, which at the time was a cottage and a barn. The barn was converted into a meeting place for worshippers, a group of prominent early Baptists. In 1813, a rebuilding saw it be divided into two parts. The western part became a cottage for a minister, whilst the eastern section continued as the chapel. The rebuilding saw the south, east and west walls replaced by brick. The building was originally timber framed with some wattle and daub infill. The north wall is still timber framed today. The interior of the chapel measures 24 feet by 15. All the furniture is original. It contains 5 19th century box pews to the north and 4 to the south. The chapel can seat 62 people. Warford Hall is not alone when it comes to filming locations around here, by the way. This chapel was used as a filming location itself for a wedding scene in the TV series Cousin Phyllis. So you've got the idea now that Great Warford is definitely a spread out kind of parish. It's not got one discernible area of settlement, there's several of them. And that one there, I think, is the nicest of the bunch, quite frankly. Love that Baptist chapel too, by the way. Very, very historic building. We have one area left to see here in Great Warford, and that will take us towards a pub called the Stag's Head. Our final section of this walk sees us tackle Mill Lane, which will take us to the parish boundary with Little Warford. Aside from some Victorian housing, there's just the one landmark on this road. Marked on the map is the Stag's Head Hotel, a pub which is still standing today. It's not serving pints though now. The Stag's Head was a cornerstone of Great Warford before it closed its doors in 2014 and was sold to Ribble Valley Inns. Ribble Valley Inns was owned by Michelin-starred chef Nigel Howarth and award-winning hotelier Craig Bancroft, both of the Northcote Hotel in Ribble Valley, Lancashire. The firm won planning permission from the council to overhaul the Stag's Head in 2016 and intended to reopen the pub the following year. They also wanted to expand the pub with extra hotel rooms, despite Cheshire East council officers calling for the scheme to be rejected. However, Ribble Valley Inns was sold off the following year and the redevelopment plans never came to fruition. The Stag's Head was then bought by professional services firm Regent Level Limited, who submitted fresh plans to the council to use it as offices. Great Warford is now, therefore, without a pub. Just a few more paces up the street brings us to the parish boundary with Little Warford. Tomorrow we'll continue this walk, taking in what that has to offer, before returning to the start at Buttermere Drive. See you then, folks. Welcome back to Cheshire East again, everybody, for round number 2. Now, yesterday we saw the parish of Great Warford, and if you watched that episode, you'll remember that I'm doing a continuous walk around the pair of Warford villages. So let's carry on with that walk. We've seen Great, now it's time for Little. Welcome to Little Warford. Little Warford, Little Wearford. Continuing our walk from yesterday, in this episode we're going to explore Little Warford, a tiny place with a huge healthcare landmark right at its centre. Little Warford has a population of under 300 people. As a parish, it's one of the newest in Cheshire, having only been created in 1951. It used to be part of the larger Marthall-Warford, which was abolished and split into 2 parts. Both of them are now separate parishes, and we'll see Marthall later this week. Little Warford can be defined by one main street, Mill Lane. It covers the area between the Stag's Head pub, where we left off yesterday, and the Pedley Brook, where there was once a mill that gives this road its name. Little Warford also covered Sandlebridge, the area that gave its name to the feeble-minded colony founded by Mary Dendy. Healthcare is very much at the centre of this community, much like it was in Great Warford. The difference is that Little Warford still has its healthcare buildings, and they are still very much in use. Right in the middle of Mill Lane is the massive David Lewis Centre, which provides medical, educational, residential and assessment services for people with epilepsy and other neurological conditions. It was founded by the David Lewis Trust, named for the man behind the famous Lewis's department store created in Liverpool back in 1856. The parish contains one listed building, a house from the 17th century known as the Wheelwright Shop. We'll catch that too. And we'll end by crossing the Mary Dendy playing fields back to Great Warford. It's time to have a look at the map. So this is the area that today forms the modern Little Warford parish. As you can see, back in 1900, the former Marthall-Warford parish was marked, as this was 49 years before it was split into 2. Little Warford and Marthall are today divided by the Pedley Brook in the west. To the east, the boundary with Great Warford runs between Sandlebridge Farm and the Stag's Head. Now, if things were the same as they are on this map, this would be a very short episode. Little Warford was wholly agricultural and had lots of fields surrounding Mill Lane. The area to the south is now a lot different, occupied by the David Lewis Centre. To the north are further healthcare buildings on the fringes of the Mary Dendy playing fields. You can also clearly see the mill here, which gives Mill Lane its name. That stood on the Pedley Brook at Sandlebridge, the crossing point for the road. Let's get started with the eastern end of Mill Lane. After crossing the boundary from the Stag's Head, the first thing you notice on this map would be the lack of buildings. There is one building on here that's of note, and it's still standing. It's called the Wheelwright Shop. It's the only listed building in Little Warford. Walk through Little Warford now though, and you're met with an array of others. On the right hand side there are former council houses, whilst on the left is the David Lewis Centre. Here's the houses. Like the ones in Great Warford, these would have been built for healthcare workers working at the Mary Dendy Hospital, Highgrove, or perhaps the David Lewis. Here's the Wheelwright Shop. This is late 17th century, made of red English garden wall bond brick with a stone slate roof. A stone tablet on the wall indicates it was re-roofed in 1966. So to the David Lewis Centre. This is also known as the David Lewis National Epilepsy Centre or the David Lewis School. It's run by the David Lewis Trust. It provides residential accommodation, education and health services to people with epilepsy, autism, learning and physical disabilities. The charity's gross income, which is in the region of £30 million or more annually, comes mainly from local authorities. It employs over 800 staff. The trust was founded in 1893 to continue the work of the Victorian philanthropist David Lewis, who died 7 years previously. In the late 19th century, there was no proper accommodation for epileptics, who were often housed in workhouses or asylums. This changed in 1902, when this site was purchased by the trust and the building of a purpose-built colony for epileptics could begin. It consisted of a series of detached villas, with each one accommodating 24 patients. In total, it could provide homes for 130 men, 130 women and 36 children. As well as accommodation, the colony also provided a residential school for pupils of all classes. In 1911, children were moved to a new residential school at Sos Moss. That move provided more space for adult colonists, but in 1914 it was decided that the colony should have its own school again, leading to the foundation of the Colthurst School. The 1950s saw rapid developments in medical understanding and treatment of epilepsy, such as the introduction of the new drug mycilene in 1951. The 1960s saw close collaboration with Manchester University, who undertook research into the problems affecting epilepsy. New clinical and assessment units were opened in 1973. The centre is still actively treating people with severe forms of epilepsy, but now treats other conditions including autism. It celebrated its 120th anniversary with a visit from the Duchess of Edinburgh, who officially opened a new college building at the same time. So, given all that, who was David Lewis? Let's find out. David Lewis was the son of Wolfe Levy, a Jewish merchant. He settled in Liverpool in 1840 and changed his surname from Levy to Lewis, working for Benjamin Hyam & Co., a tailor's. By 1856, he had accumulated enough capital to start his own business as a boys' clothier in Ranelagh Street. He would go on to be the man behind the Lewis's department stores, a chain which operated between 1856 and 2010. The first store, in Liverpool city centre, was the chain's flagship. The Liverpool store, which is still standing, opened in 1856, initially selling men's and boys' clothing, with Lewis himself mostly manufacturing his own stock. In 1864, Lewis's branched out into women's clothing. In the 1870s, the store expanded and added departments, including shoes in 1874 and tobacco in 1879. Lewis had a motto, friends of the people, and it was his intention for any shopping experience to be wholly inclusive for everyone. By 1877, Lewis's had grown enough to expand beyond Liverpool. There was a second store built in Manchester that year, and by 1885 there was a third one in Birmingham. A fourth store opened in Sheffield in 1884, but proved unprofitable and closed just 4 years later. Nonetheless, Lewis's continued to grow. During those formative years, Lewis's opened the first ever Christmas grotto in 1879. Entitled Christmas Fairyland, it was a concept devised by David Lewis himself. It was a staple of Liverpool's festive season, with many generations of children given the opportunity to visit Father Christmas there. By 1938, Lewis's had taken over the Royal Welsh Warehouse, the company that started large-scale mail order. By 1951, it had purchased the famous London department store Selfridges, expanding that brand by adding Moultons of Ilford in 1962 and rebranding it Selfridges. In 1966, the group launched Miss Selfridge Fashions, which later became a store chain in its own right. Lewis's even had a branch on Blackpool Promenade. Sited next to the world-famous Blackpool Tower, the building had a distinctive 1960s design with a turquoise-tiled exterior. Seemingly, all was well, but behind the scenes, Lewis's faced issues. The company went into administration several times. In 1991, as a result of a combination of problems, Liverpool-based competitor Owen bought several branches. They continued to trade as Lewis's, although the branch in Leicester traded independently for a short while. Other branches, including the Birmingham store, closed down. After the closure of the Manchester store in 2001, only the original Liverpool store continued to trade under the name. It was sold in 2007 to Virgo Retail Limited and closed in 2010. So of course I haven't been able to get really close to the David Lewis Centre for a good reason, because it's set back from the road and I don't want to intrude on people's privacy, especially not when we're dealing with people who need a lot of care. But you can see the building from this bridleway which runs down the side of it. This is about the closest I've got to the building. You can see how magnificent it is even from this distance. There's another good reason to check out this bridleway as well, because on the other side of it there's a community orchard. That's this area here. I imagine people from the David Lewis Centre often come and sit in this when the weather's nice. Back to the map. After passing the David Lewis Centre, you're then heading towards Sandlebridge, the name given to Mary Dendy's original feeble-minded colony. Sandlebridge is only referred to on here by way of a farm, but the name also applies to the actual bridge that crosses the Pedley Brook, Little Warford's parish boundary. Of note here is the former mill. It was called Colthurst Mill, hence the name of the school, founded within the David Lewis Centre. You can also see a field between the site of the David Lewis Centre and the Buttermere Estate in Great Warford. That's occupied today by the Mary Dendy playing fields. Not a lot is known about the history of the mill. Otherwise, there's a small cul-de-sac that's been added close by, named Sandlebridge Rise. Other than the houses on Mill Lane, it accounts for most of the rest of Little Warford's population. Turning around, we can see another area which has a collection of houses these days, Sandlebridge Farm. Passing this will take us towards our final landmark, the Mary Dendy playing fields. This building is called the Hawthorns. It's a building associated with the David Lewis Centre, and it sits on the edge of the Mary Dendy playing fields. The playing fields are of course named after Mary Dendy, the founder of the Sandlebridge colony, which today we know as the Mary Dendy Hospital. Here's something quirky to finish with. There's a football team in these parts called Mary Dendy FC. They play in the Crewe and District Saturday League. From what I can gather, they're based in Chelford, a village we'll see very soon, but they play, or at least have played in the past, on this very recreation ground. You tend to find that football clubs and local history are usually linked together. Here in Little Warford, Mary Dendy FC provide that link very nicely. Okay, once through the Mary Dendy playing fields, we're then on a path which leads back to familiar territory. You should know where you are any second now, because we have come full circle. We have covered both of the Warford villages and we've ended up back in Great Warford. Here you go. This is the Buttermere Drive Estate, where we started yesterday, and my car is literally just down there. So that's 2 down in Cheshire East, and there's still 146 to go. Better get cracking, eh? We have covered both of the Warfords in one walk. That was a really interesting area, wasn't it? Lots to talk about and great if you like your healthcare history. Cheshire is by no means just about that though. Tomorrow we're off deeper into the countryside as we take on a village that once had a nursery. The plant version, not the children's. See you there. Welcome back to Cheshire East again, everybody, for video number 3. Now, the long-time viewers out there will know I've already been to a place with this name. It was in Nottinghamshire. It's a big town on the edge of Sherwood Forest. Well, this, the Cheshire version, is absolutely nothing like that. There's no coal mines here, no big spoil heaps to try and climb over. Oh no. Instead, we're going to be talking a bit about a nursery that was operated from the town of Knutsford, just up the road. This is Ollerton. Ollerton, Alder Tree Farm. Today on TVI we're heading deeper into the Cheshire East District as we make our way onto the A537 just south of Knutsford. Today we're in a place called Ollerton, and no, I don't mean the one near Sherwood Forest. That's a town we've already been to. This is a small village which used to have a nursery, among other things. The name Ollerton means Alder Tree Farm, but there is a school of thought that suggests it may have originally been Owlerton, like the suburb of Sheffield. Lying just over 2 miles away from Knutsford, Ollerton sports a population of just over 300. Local services are somewhat limited here. There's no church, nor is there a village hall, but both of those can be found in the adjacent village of Marthall, which has been connected with Ollerton for a number of years. Other services, such as a primary school, a post office and a shop, have all closed down, with residents instead using those services in Knutsford. You can split this one up into 2 distinct areas. In the north you have the main centre of population, which occupies Marthall Lane and a couple of cul-de-sacs. The north also features the local pub named Dun Cow on the road to Knutsford. The centre of this area can be defined by the crossroads where the post office used to be. In the south you have a long straggling area occupying a tract of land south of the A537. There you can find the old school, Ollerton Hall and a bunch of farms. The A537 provides a link between them, and as the main road through it all, passing traffic often sees very little of this lovely village. We need to right that wrong and put it on the map. Speaking of which, let's see one. So here's what Ollerton looked like in 1900. To tell you the truth, it doesn't look too dissimilar to this today. You can see clearly the 2 main areas of Ollerton on this. This is the northern section where most of the population live. It's centred on a crossroads where Marthall Lane meets the main road. Today, we know that as the A537. It's only slightly smaller than it is today. The fields to the east have been built on a little, but the main nucleus of settlement is still very much there. Then to the south you can see the other part of Ollerton, which is virtually the same today. You can see the old school and the hall clearly marked. Both of those buildings still stand. Between the 2 you can see how they're linked together via a combination of the main road and its junction with the long and windy School Lane. So for our main walk, let's concentrate on the north. We'll start in this area shown on the 1900 map as a field. Today it's a playground at the end of a street called Oaklands Road. We'll then work our way down Marthall Lane, passing the old Methodist chapel to get to the crossroads. The row of houses on the junction here has a lot to tell us. Then we'll work our way north up the A537 towards the Dun Cow pub, but take note too of the word nursery on the right hand side. That'll become important. So this is the Oaklands Road play area, formerly just a field before some brand new housing came along up this northern end of the village. This is the only recreational space the village has, and so it's central to the needs of Ollerton's residents. It's also the only one available to Marthall, the next village over. A well-used and much valued facility, this has some mature trees around its boundary which help to maintain its rural character and its wide open setting. The park includes playground equipment for children, whilst the playing field also has some goalposts for a kick around. It's a great little spot, all in all. This is Oaklands Road, which is just as open plan as that play area. The properties here, which are a mixture of 20th century houses and bungalows, are all set back from the road. Between them and the road there are wide greens at the Marthall Lane end, which adds to its attractiveness. Let's head onto Marthall Lane as we make for the Methodist Chapel. On the right hand side of the road you'll notice some new houses built as a row of infills within the last 15 years. This was previously just an area of trees that lined the road. Dead opposite them is a street called Chapel Road, but that's not where the chapel was. You can find that at the end of the new houses, opposite another cul-de-sac called Beach Close. Ollerton has no church of its own, so for a long time this chapel was the only place of worship in the village. This former Methodist building was erected in 1886. It served the community for almost a century before it closed in 1982 due to the number of worshippers attending it falling to a very low level. Nonconformism has been around for a while in this area. Congregationalists and early Methodists first held services in a cottage not far from this chapel. Named number 3 Tollbar Cottages, the Wesleyans took it over in 1867 and held their first service there on the 2nd of June that year. Prior to 1886, number 2 Tollbar Cottages was also used as a preaching room. This setup continued until 1885 when the land for this chapel was made available. A year later it was built and it was in action. After worship ceased here in 1982, the building was sold by the church authorities and now it's a private dwelling. You don't have to go far to find Tollbar Cottages. Save for a modern house and a substation, they're almost next door on the central crossroads. The end one here is number 3, where those religious services would have been held once upon a time. You can also see number 2 once used as that preaching room. Number 1 had a different use. Although you will find a number 1 today, it's not the original. That was demolished in the late 1960s in order to widen the road. The original number 1 protruded outwards, meaning traffic turning right out of Marthall Lane had quite a difficult task. As you can imagine, there were many accidents. At the time of its demolition, number 1 was Ollerton Post Office. The protruding part was an outbuilding known as the Bakehouse, where fresh oven-bottom loaves used to be baked. The building had been the post office since 1880, being run by Elizabeth and William Harrop until 1924. From then until 1947, there were several tenants. In 1947, Mary Horn, Beatrice Boker and Jessie Matheson took over, and they soon became known locally as the Shop Ladies. The ladies were quite unique as the villagers relied so much on the services they provided. The post office was turned by them into something of a local shop, and it was well loved too. So the proposal to close it and demolish it to aid the traffic problem in 1966 was of great concern to the residents of Ollerton, and a solution needed to be found. Eventually, the matter was resolved by a local benefactor who provided new premises literally across the road at number 1 Yew Tree Cottages on Seven Sisters Lane. The 3 ladies moved into the new premises in 1968, but soon afterwards Mary Horn died. Beatrice Boker died too the following year, as did Matheson in 1975. In recognition of the 3 ladies for their service to Ollerton over a period of 25 years, a sorbus tree was planted at the crossroads with a memorial plaque at the base. As for the post office, it remained open until the year 2000, but was finally forced to close after the new manager, Mrs. Bailey, lost her husband. Every effort was made to find a new tenant for the business, but that failed. Now, Ollerton's nearest post office is in Shelford. If you head up the A537 towards the Dun Cow, you'll pass a brand new street completed within the last few years, despite long-standing protests from local residents. Dating back to 2016, this site originally had an application for 26 dwellings. It was eventually approved in 2018 with just 10. Now, these houses sit on part of an old nursery. To understand this, we have to understand a little bit about a local family called the Caldwells. They owned a lot of property in Ollerton, but they also owned a nursery in Knutsford. The Caldwell name was well known across Knutsford, but also much further afield. Caldwell's is a name associated with Cheshire's gardens and gardeners that stretches back 200 years. Caldwell's was a general nursery, which means they stocked the full range of plants. They began business at the end of the 18th century. At that time, there were many different ways of describing their products, but generally they had a range of forest and ornamental trees, fruit trees, and American plants. They also stocked several types of seed. It's not known for sure exactly what they had, but they had almost everything you'd find now in a modern garden centre. It was a family business run by 6 generations of men, all named William Caldwell. All 6 were either a partner or an outright owner. It was a very successful business. Caldwell supplied plants to many customers in Cheshire, Lancashire, the surrounding counties, London, and even as far away as the West Indies. So, with an operation of that magnitude, they needed space, and lots of it. And that's where Ollerton comes in. Caldwell's Knutsford Nursery is one of the earliest known. It was already an established business by the time the first William Caldwell came along in 1780. He was apprenticed to John Nixon, the man who owned the Knutsford Nursery at the time. It was known back then as Nixon and Carr because he was in a partnership with John Carr. When Nixon retired, Carr took William Caldwell into a new partnership and the nursery name changed from Nixon and Carr to Carr and Caldwell. William Caldwell went on to develop and expand the business. He ended up owning a great deal of land around Knutsford and seemingly he put it to good use. He's known to have owned nursery grounds in Ollerton in 1848, 3 plots of land totalling nearly 4 acres. That was only a small part of his holdings. He had 27 acres across the Knutsford area. The land in Ollerton was either side of what is now the A537. On the Marthall Lane side was a rose nursery, and on the Seven Sisters Lane side was a tree nursery. The main base of operations remained within Knutsford throughout that time, but there were plans to move it all to Ollerton. The idea was to create an arboretum at the bottom of the rose nursery at the same time, an interesting area which had a lily pond. However, following a public meeting, the planned relocation was rejected by Ollerton's residents based on safety issues relating to access and the effects on the residents around the crossroads. Ollerton remained a key site for Caldwell's though, and did so until the business eventually closed in 1992. The site of Caldwell's tree nursery became Ollerton Nursery, and today those new houses we've just seen sit on that very land. Okay, so that's the nursery sorted out. Next job is to head up this road towards the Dun Cow pub, which has got a very interesting history. Let's see what it can tell us. Now we've reached the Dun Cow pub, where the A537 bends westward slightly before continuing on to Knutsford. The name Dun Cow is surprisingly common across England, but this is the first time we've met it. The name is linked to several folk tales involving a brown cow, which is what Dun Cow means. One supposedly roamed Dunsmore Heath near Dunchurch in Warwickshire before being slain by Guy of Warwick, for example. I've no idea what the story is with this one though. Now, you'd likely want to visit this if you wanted a great pub meal, and to be fair, the Dun Cow does that rather nicely. However, not everyone that's eaten in here has lived long enough to come back again. Don't worry, the food isn't poisonous, it's just that the Dun Cow used to be a stopping point for condemned criminals en route to Knutsford to be hanged. Many would eat their last meal here. You see, as well as being a pub, the Dun Cow also served as a temporary courthouse and a makeshift prison too. It doesn't now though, and I can assure you nobody will take you to the gallows if you pop in. The last hanging ever recorded in Knutsford was in 1912, where Booth's car park now is. Beyond the pub it becomes very leafy. Up there, as the road continues on to Knutsford, is Windmill Wood. There's no windmill in it these days, but there's always a clue in the name. Many historical maps, such as John Speed's map of Cheshire in 1600, identify windmills within the wood. Windmill Wood has many veteran trees and several ponds, which provide wetland habitats for the resident wildlife. The woodland is privately owned, and there's no general public access, apart from 3 public rights-of-way that run through it. Windmill Wood is designated an SBI site, recognised by Cheshire Wildlife Trust and the Woodland Trust too. This is why some proposed development on it back in 2009 was rejected. So just so you're aware, Windmill Wood is actually at the corner. It's not these trees you can see on either side of the road, although I suppose they are, technically speaking, part of it. But yeah, there's not much point going all the way up there to the actual wood itself, because they're trees. To me, they just all look the same. They might be different to some people, but I'm not one of those people. So let's make our way back past the dun cow and down towards where we started. It's just starting to spit with rain right now, so hopefully I get back to the car before I get soaked. Just want to make a point about this road, by the way. Can you imagine how much of a nightmare it would be these days if toll bar cottages were still protruding out onto this road? It would cause some serious accidents, I'm sure. I even had a woman come to me when I was filming them asking me, am I doing something with speed cameras? I said, no, I'm just making a video of the village. She seemed very disappointed about that. I imagine a lot of people come down this road at speed. It's a 50 limit, but yeah, it's almost dead straight between here and Macclesfield, so you can see why people might want to put the foot down. We're going to travel down this road ourselves now towards the southern part of Ollerton, down School Lane. See you there in a sec. Now to look at the south of the village. To get there, we need to use the A537 and turn right into the long and windy School Lane. That will take us past several old farms and a former smithy clustered around the junction. Most of these buildings still stand. You might have already guessed it, but yes, the A537 used to be a turnpike, hence the toll bar cottages at the crossroads. There isn't really a lot to say about this area, so I'm just going to let the driving do the talking. See you again very shortly. The south has 2 main landmarks. These are the school, which still stands despite being closed for years now, and Ollerton Hall just to the north of it. Beyond these, to the south, are more farms, whilst to the north is the A537, accessed using the lane adjacent to the hall. Ollerton has had 2 school buildings in its history. The first, according to a historical record, was funded from the estate of Samuel Lee and built in around 1700. The second school, built close to the first in 1876 by Lord Egerton, is this. Due to falling numbers of pupils attending, the school closed in 1993 and was sold in 1994. It's now a private dwelling. The closure of the school was a sad occasion. Residents of the village organised a strong campaign to keep it open, but with only 30 pupils, they were fighting a losing battle. Today, schooling for Ollerton's children is provided by Chelford or by Knutsford. Whichever is preferred though, there's some travelling involved. Finally, we come to the Hall, a country house whose nucleus dates from the 16th century. It was originally built in an H-plan, followed by a succession of rambling extensions. There was a reference to a building on this site in the Domesday Book, though the existing building has nothing from those times. This is full instead of awesome Georgian features. The house was built originally for the powerful de Baggerly family, once a prominent name in Cheshire. A plaque over the entrance here is inscribed with the initials THP. They stand for Thomas Henry Potts. Alongside those is a date, 1728. Otherwise, the building is constructed in rendered brick with a slate roof. The entrance front has 5 bays, whilst at each end is a gabled crosswing. It's a Grade 2 listed building. It also has 5.6 acres of mature gardens, paddocks and an orchard, as well as a stable block, a coach house and a range of outbuildings, as well as a separate wing. That wing is known as Ollerton Hall House, currently utilised as a most delightful standalone 3-bedroom house. To get to the next village, you have 2 options: either drive down the A537 directly, or go back through Ollerton via the crossroads and take the longer, more scenic route. There can only be one choice as far as I'm concerned, the longer route, because the direct route would miss out half of the next parish. See you on the road again tomorrow. Welcome back to Cheshire East again, everybody. Now, it's almost pointless putting the Strava on for this episode. I will, though, still put it on. The reason it's almost pointless is because from this position here, you can see the end of our walk. I'm not even joking. We're starting here and we're ending just up there at that junction. That's how big this place is, i.e. not very. This is Marthall. Marthall, Weasel Nook. After exploring the lovely village of Ollerton yesterday, we find ourselves today in its much smaller neighbour, Marthall, which has been linked to it since 1976. Although the 2 villages keep their own separate identities, they share a parish council, something that Marthall is used to doing. As we learned in Little Warford, this village used to be within one part of a former parish. Named Marthall-cum-Warford, it was split into 2 parts in 1951, with the eastern portion becoming Little Warford and the western section becoming Marthall. That setup and those boundaries are the same today. Marthall means Weasel's Nook, taking its name from the creature known as a marten. You may recall Marefield in Leicestershire had the same derivation. Marthall is around 3 miles away from Knutsford, access to which is provided by the A537, a former turnpike road connecting it to Macclesfield. Although a lot smaller than Ollerton, it's Marthall which has most of the facilities and amenities that are shared by the 2 villages. Here you'll find a village hall built in 2009, and on the central junction where the A537 sweeps its way past the place is the church. Yes, at last, we will finally come to a church here in Cheshire East. So far, we haven't seen one, and we're 4 episodes in. Continue down the A537 towards Macclesfield and you'll see that Marthall also possesses a pub called the Edgerton Arms. That sits on the edge of Chelford, but it's just on the Marthall side of the boundary. We won't get much of a walk in this one. In fact, a lot of this will be done by driving. Let's go. This is the area covered by the modern Marthall parish, created in 1951 after it split from Little Warford. That extinguished the former Marthall-cum-Warford marked on this map. The main village of Marthall can be defined as this area here, along the route of the A537. It has just 2 main landmarks of note, those being the church and the village hall. Martall is, though, a much larger parish than the size of the village would have you believe. It's very rural out here, and so to the north and west it encompasses a lot of farmland. There are several farms along Pinfold Lane, which becomes Martall Lane in Ollerton. Then to the east is Sandalbridge Lane, a loop-like lane with more farms that connects it all to Little Warford. Let's get started with those northern areas. Here we are zoomed in on Pinfold Lane, and you can see how rural it was back in 1900. It's pretty much exactly the same now. Fir Tree Farm, Brook Farm and Pinfold Farm all still exist, whilst the land around them is still covered by arable fields. Let's drive it. Farming has been the main economic practice out here for several centuries, and it still continues to be. This farmland to the north of the village has been churning out crops for years. It's also designated greenbelt land, so the would-be housing developers out there who often eye up this kind of area aren't able to build on it without a lot of hassle. This rural area has diversified a bit over the last century. Some of the Sandalbridge Lane farms have become small industrial estates, housing various other things. These include a fitness centre, a vehicle repair garage, an upholstery shop and a catering equipment store. In addition, on the main A537, there's a big business called Martall Tree Products, which makes things like wooden fences. They were formed in 1990, initially operating from a bug-infested caravan within the former Martall Nursery. Their early focus was on landscaping products. It all keeps the economy of Martall going, even if it's not wholly traditional now. There are some clues on the map too, as to some other forms of historic industry. Where Pinfold Lane meets Sandalbridge Lane, there's an area marked as Fallows Cross. It has a few more houses now than this shows, but they aren't anything greatly special. Look to the left of them though, and you'll see the words Brickfield. It's only small, but that's a clear indication that this land was perhaps utilised for the making of bricks. This is what the brickfield looks like now. If bricks were once made here, you'd likely never know. The only clue to its potential existence would be those trees. They stand in what appear to be little pools, likely left behind by small-scale extraction. If this was a brickworks, it was never huge and was probably a side project for a local farmer. Okay, so the rain has finally stopped, which is a good thing. It means I'm not going to get wet in this one. But to be fair, I think I'd be pretty good at dodging spots anyway in this place because there's virtually nothing to it. There's two landmarks in the main village. One of them is behind me, that's the village hall. The other one is the church, which is on the junction you saw at the beginning of this video. Let's check them both out. After following the lane south even more, we come into the main Martall village. Much like Ollerton, it's based around a crossroads. Again, this hasn't changed much from here to now. The Church of All Saints is still there, as are the houses on the opposite side of the road. Where there has been a change is to the north, where today there's a brand new village hall. This is the village hall, and it was built in 2009. A communal building of some description has stood here though for many years. This, the current hall, was first proposed in 2007. Before this was built, there was a wooden structure here, which was decaying and needed to be replaced. The wooden predecessor had several faults. Its low ceiling and poor heating were the main ones. These led to a decision to build a new hall, and quickly. The other option was to demolish it, but there was a strong community desire to retain a community building, despite the fact that the people were increasingly unwilling to use the old hall. To build the new one, grants were obtained from the Big Lottery Fund, Wren, Cheshire County Council, Manchester Airport, some local businesses and the parish council. Planning permission for the new hall was granted in 2008 and construction started in spring 2009. It was officially opened that December with a new, simple name, the Hall at Martall. Literally next door, flanked only by a handful of houses on the opposite side of the road, we have the church, our first look at one within the district of Cheshire East. Dedicated to All Saints, this serves the villages of Martall, Ollerton and Little Warford. As you can tell, it's a pretty modern building. There's no ancient stone here. Built in 1839 and consecrated by the Bishop of Chester in the November, it was designed to be a chapel of ease to the church in Rosthern, north of Knutsford. The land on which this church sits, known as Glover's Cross, was donated by Wilbraham Egerton. The building work was completed in 1841. At that time, there were more than 300 people living within 1 mile of the site of the church, but more than 2 miles from an existing place of worship, hence the need for it. Previously, parishioners had attended church at Over Pever, using an almost dead straight lane from Glover's Cross to Pever Church for their journeys. After the opening of Martle's Church, the lane became redundant and was wholly absorbed into the surrounding fields. You can, however, still trace bits of that lane if you look carefully on overhead imagery. A new chancel and vestry were added to the original building in 1886 thanks to Wilbraham Baron Egerton of Tatton, not the same guy who donated the land. The church contains 3 beautiful stained glass windows located in the apse of the church. They act as a memorial, added in appreciation of the generosity and support shown by Baron Egerton. In 2006, 120 years after they were installed, the parishioners here raised £4,000 to cover specialist restoration and repair work necessary to the windows and the apse. So yeah, according to Strava, that took me all of 8 minutes to walk between the village hall and the church. Not a very big place at all when you think about it. But of course the parish is much bigger than this main village. We've already seen bits of it. It extends all the way down to Chelford, which is the next big village that way towards Macclesfield. And we're going to drive that now. We're going to see what's down there. We're going to be talking about a car boot sale and also a pub. To finish with, we're heading down the A537 towards a pub which bears the Egerton name, helping to solidify the history of this area. Simply named the Egerton Arms, it sits on the parish boundary with Chelford. Between here and the pub though, note too what else is marked on this map. It's a moated site. Despite my best efforts to find out some information about the moated site, I found nothing. The moat has now been built over, occupied by Moat Hall Farm. Driving along the A537 takes us past that site, but it also takes us by the gates of a field where the Chelford car boot sale is regularly held. The history of the boot sale is connected to the late Richard Scott, who owned a large farm in the area and organised car boot sales from it. Richard Scott was a multi-millionaire, known to many around here as the Car Boot King. He died at the age of 81 after making a packet running them. His car boot enterprise was the UK's second biggest, and it was run from what the Knutsford Guardian once described as a vast Cheshire farm. That farm was Moat Hall. Moat Hall Farm and the field where the boot sales are held once featured on TV. ITV's Car Boot Challenge was filmed right here. Richard Scott's son, Adam, helped manage the boot sales for many years and still does. They're usually held on Sundays and on bank holiday Mondays. Recently, there was a legal dispute over Richard's will, which saw Adam do battle with his stepmother over a £5 million sum, the inheritance of the farm, and the future of the car boot sale. The car boot sale is still going strong though. It mainly features families selling unwanted goods, with 1 or 2 traders adding to the mix. It costs £1 to enter, and plenty of parking is provided on the fields. Bargains can be had if you look hard enough. And I suppose if you walk around the car boot sale, you have the perfect excuse afterwards to go to the pub. Just down the road we find the Egerton Arms. This was originally built in the 15th century as the stables for horses on their way to Tatton Park. Later, the building was a known haunt for highwaymen. They used tunnels under the road as part of an escape route, with the bricked up entrances to those still visible in the cellar to this day. The pub is now mainly a large single room on 3 levels with rural decor and low lighting. It has a real fire too, which provides an intimate atmosphere. A separate small games room is used for pool and darts, and there's a garden. The interior is both child and dog friendly too. Since becoming a free house, the pub has offered a good range of drinks, including some from the local Mobberley Brewhouse. Food-wise, you can get some beer-battered fish here, renowned as the best in the locality. The chips served with it are made from potatoes grown in the field literally over the road. With live music every 3 months and quiz nights on the last Thursday of the month, the Egerton Arms is by far one of the best pubs in the area, and long may it continue to be. So that's it for Marthall. Now, because we're on the parish boundary with Chelford, you'd perhaps be forgiven for thinking we're off there next. Not so. We're going to Chelford soon, but first we're going to wrap up this week with a visit to a parish whose days are numbered. You'll see what I mean tomorrow. Hello Cheshire East people, today I have brought you into the middle of nowhere, literally. This is a very small place and we'll be through it pretty quick, let me tell you. Most of this one will be done using the car because even though you can walk around this, it's much easier to drive it, and you'll see why when we get into it. This is the parish of Snelson. Snelson, Snell's Farm. Okay, here we have the next parish in Cheshire East, but not for much longer. When I was planning this run, I made it a priority to make sure I came to Snelson, and this is why. Cheshire East underwent a series of changes in April 2023. Parish boundaries were moved around, some were merged with others, and a couple of new ones were created. That means, theoretically, we should be covering a brand new parish here called Pever Superior and Snelson, formed by the merger of two old ones. The thing is, not all of the changes have yet taken full effect everywhere. By that, I mean the huge list that I work from, which draws its information from the ONS, still hasn't updated its records. I have to stay true to that list, no matter what. That means both Pever Superior and Snelson will still get their own episodes. That in itself is not an issue, but here's the annoying part. There's very little to tell you about Snelson on its own. If we were covering the new Pever Superior and Snelson, I'd have loads to go at. Over Pever is the main village and it's full of stuff. It's not hard to see why Snelson was abolished and merged with something else. It's such a small place, but adding to that, the boundary with Pever Superior ran down one of its roads. It was a logical step, no matter how you look at it. All of this means we're going to get a bit of a weird episode out of this today. We're in a place that theoretically only exists in official records, but soon won't. So before it ceases to exist on its own, let's put Snelson on the map. We have literally 3 things to see: a chapel, a wood, and a railway line. Let's get to it. As ever, we start with the map of the village as it was in 1900. Snelson looks pretty similar to this today. Note the dotted line on the left-hand side of the map running down that road. That's the former boundary with Pever Superior, which was gotten rid of in 2023 when the parishes merged. We, though, have to stick to the right of that line. We also have to stick to the south of this line, the northern boundary, which still exists. That leaves us with a very awkwardly shaped village to see. Zooming in, here we can see in more detail what the place had back in 1900. Basically a row of houses seen here on the right and a Methodist chapel further along the lane. Elsewhere on the left you can see some isolated houses. Today the number of houses has increased slightly, but it still retains the same shape, size and character. The easiest way to show you what Snelson looks like today isn't by walking it. The best option is to take the car around the village in a full circuit, starting and ending at the chapel. This is the main road from east to west, Pepper Street. This connects over Pever to the fringes of Chelford at the A537. The road that formed the boundary with Pever Superior running north to south is Mill Lane. Connecting the two is the narrow Common Lane, which we'll use to form the circuit. With the exception of what we'll see on Common Lane, everything within Snelson is on the left-hand side of the screen. Here's a bit about the name Snelson. It's believed to originate either from the Old English personal name Snell or the Old Norse Snaller. It could also be a patronymic surname, meaning son of Snell. As a surname, here's one for the genealogists. It has possible connections to Buckinghamshire and Derbyshire. A lot of the houses Snelson possesses these days are hidden behind trees, shrubs and bushes. It's a very secluded place, well out of the way of anything. You would do well to know it's even here. Most modern maps barely even recognise it. Despite all the trees, farming is the main economic activity. There are a number of small farms around the village, all working the land between here and a railway line that cuts across Snelson to the south. The rich farmland around here is now a little different to what was described in the Domesday Book. It was pretty scathing actually. It referred to this area as waster. That was an early form of describing wasteland or otherwise abandoned or useless land. It certainly isn't now. After completing the circuit of the village, we've hopped out of the car briefly to check out Chapel Wood, dead opposite the Methodist Chapel on Pepper Lane. Much like Over-Peever to the west, Snelson was once part of an immense oak wood, and as we already know, it's still pretty leafy. The wood, which covered most of Cheshire, provided various monarchs with timber for warships and weapons. Who knows what Snelson's trees have provided over the centuries? Chapel Wood is ancient, characterised by its diverse range of trees, including oak, birch, beech and a few conifers. The forest floor is often covered with a carpet of ferns. There aren't any rights of way through it, save for one that skirts its eastern edge. That hasn't stopped people making a few unofficial ones, mind you. Let's have a look at the chapel which gives the wood its name. Snelson Methodist Chapel is understood to date back to 1825, although some extensions have been built since then. The chapel held its closing service in September 2022, following reports it had been struggling financially for some time. The building, which has a graveyard both at the front and at the back, was sold at auction in 2023. Today, it's been turned into a 3-bedroom house. The burial grounds remain open to the public, but there are some plans to remove some of the older headstones, the ones that are 80 or more years old. Until its closure, this was the only place of worship Snelson has ever had. Now, the residents are reliant on other villages, such as Over-Peever. Okay, that's pretty much all there is to Snelson, people. If you haven't seen it from my car window or from this road, i.e. the chapel and the wood, that's pretty much it. There's not really much more to the place. There is one area we haven't yet touched though. There's a road that links Snelson to Chelford, or more accurately, it links it to Assell Hall, which is something we'll see in the very near future. So let's drive down there now and check out the railway line that it crosses. So, short and sweet perhaps, but that's the main area of Snelson covered. There is another part to the parish though. South of the village, Mill Lane leads to Snelson Lane. If you turn left to follow that road, it crosses a railway line before twisting its way towards the church at Chelford. Let's take a look at that railway. The line in question is the one that links Manchester to Crewe. It's a spur of the West Coast Main Line. This is the first time we've ever seen this railway, so let's introduce it properly. Built by the Manchester and Birmingham Railway Company, the route from Crewe to Manchester Piccadilly was the first section of the West Coast Main Line to be electrified in 1959. It's joined at Cheadle-Hulme by another West Coast spur from Stoke-on-Trent. At Stockport, it's then joined by the Mid-Cheshire, the Hope Valley and the Buxton lines. Stand on this bridge and you'll see quite a few trains. It's a busy old route. Northern trains operate services between Crewe, Alderley Edge and Manchester Piccadilly via Stockport. They also run trains to Manchester Airport via something called the Style Line, a loop section that branches from the main and rejoins near Levenshulme. Not all trains you see here begin their journeys in Crewe. Express trains from Cardiff and Milford Haven use this route to reach Manchester. A number of West Coast mainline services that begin in London also fly underneath this bridge, stopping at Crewe before continuing on to Manchester. Cross Country also operate a small number of services on the line between Manchester Piccadilly, Birmingham New Street and the South. Snelson, of course, does not have a station. The nearest one is at Chelford, about 1.5 miles away to the north. We'll be seeing that very soon. And that's it for Snelson. If you continue down the road towards Chelford, you'll pass through more leafy countryside and by the gates of Assell Hall. That's over the border into Chelford though. It's been a fun week. From mental and epileptic healthcare facilities to nurseries, car boot sales and major railways, our first visit to Cheshire East has been great. But we are not finished. There are still 143 more of these to cover, and you should join me again in a little over a week when we knock off 2 more. I'll see you then. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.